Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we're going to examine a case that's defined by a single, chilling act of intentional darkness: the disappearance of Laureen Rahn.
It's a terrifying story. And not because the crime scene was, violent or bloody. It's terrifying because of what happened right after. It contains one of the most calculated, disturbing clues I think we've ever come across in a missing person case.
So set the scene for us. Where and when are we?
We're on Merrimack Street in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's a quiet Saturday night, April of 1980.
And Laureen Rahn, she's just 14 years old. She's at home at spring break. She has friends over. Everything about it seems completely, totally routine.
It is, until the late hours of the night. Her mother, Judith, she returns to their apartment building after midnight, around 1:15 a.m., and that's when she finds something that just instantly sets this case apart from almost any other.
The building is dark.
It's pitch black, the entire three-story hallway. And you have to understand, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a power outage.
Yeah.
The sources are absolutely clear. The light bulbs on all three floors, they had been methodically unscrewed.
An act of pre-planning. A staged blackout.
Absolutely. It's designed for total concealment.
And then, by morning, Laureen is simply gone. There's no sign of a struggle in their third-floor apartment. None of her things are taken. Just a vacant space where she should have been sleeping. And this terrifying question hanging over the entire city: who unscrewed those bulbs? And was the person Laureen met that night a friend, a predator, or was it someone far more complex who orchestrated this darkness?
That's what we're going to unpack. The disturbing sequence of events and the strange, almost intimate clues that followed for years after.
This is a case you really need to understand because it asks this fundamental question. Can a predator be both intimately familiar with a family and at the same time globally transient?
It's a chilling contradiction.
Okay, let's start with the initial scene and, of course, the person at the center of all this. Let's talk about Laureen Rahn.
Laureen Rahn. She was born on April 3rd, 1966. And the sources, they paint a very specific picture. She was petite, 5'4", only about 90 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes, a student at Parkside Junior High. And she lived with her mom, Judith, in that third-floor apartment on Merrimack Street.
Right. And you really have to hold two different images of Laureen in your head at the same time, don't you?
You do. Because on one hand, her family described her as happy, outgoing, a dreamer. She loved to sing and dance, wanted to be an actress. She was a good student. The classic hopeful American teenager.
But there's another side to it. The sources bring in a complication.
Yes. Her aunt said she was an angel who hung around with the wrong people for a while. Some investigators described her as troubled. She was spending time alone on the streets, had started drinking alcohol, using marijuana, and she had talked, occasionally about maybe running away.
So there's this context of vulnerability, which is so critical. But we have to be really careful not to confuse that vulnerability with, say, a plan to disappear.
That's the key distinction. Her lifestyle might have made her more accessible to trouble, absolutely. But her actions, or rather the lack of action, on the night she vanished, argue so forcefully against any kind of planned exit.
What was she wearing?
Just standard clothes. A white V-neck sweater, a blue plaid blouse, blue jeans, brown shoes. She had on a heart-shaped gold ring and a silver and blue necklace. Nothing out of the ordinary.
But it's what she left behind that tells the real story.
Exactly. This is where the runaway theory just completely falls apart. Her purse, all of her money, and this is the most telling detail. A brand new pair of sneakers she'd just gotten for her birthday. They were all left behind in the apartment.
You don't leave your money. You don't leave your ID. And you definitely don't leave your brand new birthday gift if you're planning on starting a new life somewhere else.
You just don't. And that's the moment investigators really shifted their thinking. They went from assuming, okay, this is runaway, to concluding that she left that apartment intending to come right back within minutes. And something catastrophic happened, probably just outside the door.
So let's walk through that really narrow timeline. We're talking about the night of April 26th into the morning of the 27th, 1980.
Right. It's spring break. Laureen's mom, Judith, is going out with her boyfriend. And Laureen asks if she can just stay home.
A decision that creates this window of opportunity.
A huge one. She invites two friends over. One is a female friend who ends up staying the night. The second is a male friend but he's significantly older. He's 21.
And what were they doing?
They spent the evening drinking a six-pack of beer and a bottle of wine. The sources mention Laureen might have gotten the alcohol earlier that day from a local store where she worked stocking shelves. And this whole drinking dynamic is central because it clouds the memory of the only other conscious witness there.
So we get to the first critical moment. It's about 12:30 in the morning on April 27th. Laureen and the 21-year-old male friend are in the living room, and they hear something.
They hear voices out in the hallway coming towards the apartment.
And the male friend, he panics.
He completely panics. I mean, you have to think about it from his perspective. He's 21. He's been drinking alcohol with a minor, and her mother is due home any minute. He's worried about getting in serious trouble.
So he bolts.
He bolts, makes a hasty exit through the back door. And he later tells police that as he was leaving, he heard Laureen lock that back door behind him.
And we should mention for you, the listener, that this detail about the voices, it's not just his story. A neighbor confirmed it. They also heard voices coming up the stairs towards the Rahn apartment right around that time. So someone was definitely there.
Right. And this leads us directly to the core mystery. Around 1:15 a.m., Laureen's mom, Judith, and her boyfriend get home. And they're immediately confronted with that orchestrated darkness, the unscrewed light bulbs. I mean, imagine walking into that total manufactured blackout in the public space of your own building.
It's terrifying. It indicates meticulous control by someone who was either waiting for them or had just left.
So Judith gets to her third-floor apartment, and the front door is unlocked. She quickly peeks into Laureen's bedroom, sees a figure in the bed in the dark, and she just assumes, reasonably, that it's her daughter, safe and asleep. She doesn't check any further.
But her boyfriend noticed something wasn't right.
Yeah, he was maybe a bit more alert. He sees that the back door, the same door the male friend supposedly heard Laureen lock, is open. It's ajar.
And that little detail is what makes Judith go back and check the bedroom again.
And that's when she realizes the person in the bed isn't Laureen. It's the female friend.
When she wakes the friend up, what does she say?
The girl claims she was really intoxicated, that she doesn't remember much. But she says Laureen had taken her pillow and blanket to go sleep on the living room couch. But Laureen wasn't on the couch. She wasn't anywhere.
So that window between roughly 1:15 a.m. and when the police are finally called around 3:45 a.m., that's when it all happened.
That's the window. And the scene itself is it's a chilling contradiction. There are no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. The apartment is pristine, but the occupant is missing.
When Judith flags down the police at 3:45 a.m., what was their initial reaction?
For weeks, they stuck to the runaway theory. It made sense on the surface, given her age and some of the things she'd said in the past.
But the physical evidence just didn't support it.
Not at all. No money, no ID, no packed bag, no new sneakers. That forced investigators to a different conclusion. That she left intending to come right back, and that foul play was now highly, highly suspected.
There was that one early lead, though, the one about the bus ticket to Boston.
Yeah, a fleeting lead. A bus company employee thought they sold a ticket to a girl who looked like Laureen, and a driver was pretty sure he dropped her off in Park Square, Boston.
Sounds promising.
It was, initially. But here's the problem with eyewitness identification, especially months after the fact. The driver identified Laureen based on an old photograph. When police showed him a more recent photo a few weeks later, he took it back. He recanted his identification.
And just like that, the Boston lead was gone.
It was dismissed, and that left the entire case anchored right back in that darkened hallway on Merrimack Street. Officially an endangered missing person case with foul play suspected.
So the police are basically stuck. The physical evidence, those unscrewed light bulbs, it screams abduction. But there's no body, no struggle, no clear direction to go.
Right. And then just 5 months later, the whole case gets yanked 3,000 miles to the west. And this is where we get into these bizarre, psychologically taxing phone calls from California.
This is where it goes from a local tragedy to something else entirely.
It really does. On October 1st, 1980, so just over 5 months after Laureen vanished, Judith Rahn gets a phone bill. And on it are charges for 3 calls placed from California, a place Laureen had absolutely no connection to.
And for you, the listener, the source of this billing is important. The sources indicate these were chargeable calls, traced back to Judith's number, which implies one of two things. Either Laureen herself was making them and billing them to her family's line, or someone very sophisticated was routing the charges there as a deliberate tactic.
The calls came from two different spots. Two were from a motel in Santa Monica. But the third call, this is the most disturbing one. It was made from a Santa Ana motel to a hotline for teens seeking sexual assistance.
Wow, that immediately suggests a link to, a world of exploitation, not just a teenager trying to be independent.
Exactly. And when detectives first called the doctor running this hotline, he claimed he knew nothing. But the story changes pretty dramatically 5 years later.
What happened in 1985?
A private investigator named Carol Jensen from an organization called Wings for Children, she follows up. She was tenacious. Jensen interviews the physician again, and suddenly his memory improves. He claims that yes, runaway girls did occasionally visit his wife at their home, and he concedes that one of them may have been Laureen Rahn.
So he just changes the story 5 years later. That immediately raises a lot of red flags.
Huge red flags.
Yeah.
Was he protecting someone? Was he just now realizing the gravity of it? It creates immense doubt about his initial denial.
And Jensen didn't stop there, did she?
No. In 1986, she went to California herself. She visited those Santa Ana motels where the calls came from, and she discovered that one of them may have been used for filming child pornography by a person known only as Dr. Z.
That's a staggering connection. It ties the phone call directly to a known predatory network operating in California at that time. But could she ever link Dr. Z, the pornography figure, to the doctor who ran the teen hotline?
Unfortunately, no. She couldn't officially connect the two, so Dr. Z just remains this elusive potential thread. But the fact that Laureen's case intersects with these specific locations and activities, it strongly suggests the calls were placed by someone involved in or facilitating some very illegal, very dark things.
And beyond those charged calls from California, there was another layer of harassment, right? This one directed right at Laureen's mother.
Yes. Sustained psychological harassment. Starting in 1981, a year after Laureen vanished, Judith began getting these mysterious, silent phone calls.
And this is where the perpetrator demonstrates just a calculated cruelty.
It's pure psychological torture. Because these calls, they always came around 3:45 in the morning.
The exact time she had flagged down the police to report Laureen missing.
The exact time. That consistency is not random. It is designed to wake Judith up every night and force her to relive the absolute panic of that moment.
The calls got more frequent too, especially around holidays like Christmas, just maximizing the emotional distress.
They only stopped when she finally changed her phone number years later. But the truly chilling part, the detail that proves this wasn't just some random prank, is the intimate knowledge the caller or callers displayed.
Right. One source says Judith got calls where the person on the other end asked for Dr. Zeb.
The Dr. Zeb.
And that was the family cat's nickname.
Exactly. A unique, private nickname. That detail is explosive. And for you, the key takeaway is what it implies. It signifies extreme, specific familiarity. This wasn't someone who just read a newspaper article. This is someone who had been inside that apartment or was incredibly close to the family.
It points overwhelmingly towards the perpetrator or maybe an accomplice just trolling the family with inside knowledge.
Right. It's not Laureen trying to make contact. It's harassment. And investigators took it very seriously because it directly clashed with the idea of a random, opportunistic abduction. And it wasn't just Judith getting these calls.
No. Laureen's ex-boyfriend, a guy named Roger Moraes, he got a call in 1986. A woman claiming to be Lori used a pet name that only the two of them knew.
And Laureen's aunt, Janet Roy, she also got silent calls, where the person asked for her son, Michael, but used the nickname Mike, which is what only Laureen called him.
So if you connect these pieces, you have the unscrewed light bulbs, which suggests this external planned abduction, but then you have these intimate nicknames, which suggests someone with deep internal familiarity.
It creates the fundamental tension of this whole case. The calls feel like they're designed to torment the family, maybe to suggest Laureen is still alive and suffering, while at the same time proving the caller has this insider access. It's a pattern you see when a perpetrator feels a personal connection to the victim's family.
It also runs completely contrary to what Laureen's mother believes, even today.
It does. Judith Rahn has said publicly that she believes her daughter made those California calls. She holds on to the hope that Laureen survives and ran away. And, it is a completely human thing for a mother to prioritize hope over the hard evidence.
But the evidence. The lack of packed belongings, the premeditated blackout, the trolling calls using the cat's nickname, it just pushes that voluntary runaway theory to the absolute brink of impossibility.
I think so. The evidence points to an abduction by someone who either knew Laureen very well or had studied her life with a chilling intensity.
Okay, so we have this huge contradiction. Evidence of meticulous external planning with the blackout, mixed with evidence of extreme internal familiarity with the cat's nickname. Let's bring the focus back to Manchester, back to 1980. Because Laureen's disappearance didn't happen in a vacuum. There was a cluster of other unsolved cases right in that area.
That's right. And the proximity in both time and geography is fascinating. Just 1 month before Laureen vanished, a 15-year-old named Rachel Garden went missing from nearby Newton, New Hampshire. Now, authorities have never found a definitive link, but 2 teenage girls vanishing from the same area back-to-back months. It certainly suggests a regional threat.
And then, 6 weeks after Laureen disappeared, a 25-year-old woman named Denise Digneau went missing from a Manchester bar. And crucially, she lived only 2 blocks away from the Rahn residence. That is too close to be a coincidence.
It's way too close. And the focus on Denise Digneau is so significant because it introduces the primary modern suspect in her disappearance, Terry Peter Rasmussen.
Also known as Bob Evans, the infamous serial killer linked to the Bear Brook murders.
The very same. And for you, the listener, that Bear Brook connection is critical context. Rasmussen murdered at least 4 female victims whose bodies were found in barrels in a New Hampshire state park. He was a highly transient, deeply predatory individual.
And the overlap with Laureen Rahn's case is terrifying.
It is immediate. Sources confirm that Rasmussen was living only a mile and a half from Laureen's apartment on Merrimack Street at the exact time she disappeared in April 1980. His proximity, his known M.O., it makes him an obvious and compelling person of interest.
Let's talk about that MO. He often lived in apartment complexes, used aliases, worked under the radar. So now, link that to the physical evidence in the Rahn case, the unscrewed light bulbs.
Rasmussen's history shows he had a kind of detached calculation you'd need to pull something like that off. The light bulb tampering. It suggests someone who needed total, safe cover to move a victim out of a building without being noticed. He was the type of predator who would case a neighborhood, understand its patterns, and be capable of manipulating the environment to make his crime easier. Unscrewing every single bulb is methodical. It's cold. Those are traits Rasmussen showed again and again.
There's also the victimology. Sources indicate that both Laureen Rahn and Denise Digneau reportedly had a similar physical appearance, despite their age difference.
Right. And this potential link is strong enough that in 2020, the Manchester police publicly confirmed they are actively investigating a possible connection between Rasmussen and Laureen Rahn's disappearance. While there's no public DNA link yet, the timeline, the proximity, and the victim type, it places him squarely in the frame.
But here's the conflict we have to resolve for you. How does Rasmussen, this transient, opportunistic serial killer, know the name of the family cat, Dr. Zeb? That detail suggests an intimacy that just clashes completely with the profile of a killer who drifts from place to place.
And that is the absolute crux of this case. You have to consider a few scenarios because the evidence is pulling us in 2 different directions. Scenario 1. Rasmussen was capable of intense, prolonged surveillance. He didn't just stumble upon Laureen. He watched that apartment for days, maybe weeks. He learned the routine, saw the cat, maybe overheard the nicknames. That would explain both the sophisticated blackout and the insider knowledge.
Okay. Scenario 2.
There was an accomplice, a Confederate. Rasmussen was the one who did the abduction, who orchestrated the darkness. But someone else, someone known to Laureen, maybe a friend, provided those intimate details like the cat's nickname. And then Rasmussen used that information for the later psychological torment.
And there's a third scenario, wasn't there? One that pulls us back to the inner circle.
Yes. Back to the 21-year-old male friend who was drinking with Laureen that night. He fled after hearing voices, and he's the one who claimed he heard Laureen lock the door behind him.
It's a really suspicious departure. His testimony is the only account we have of Laureen's final actions before her mother got home. Police never publicly named him a suspect, but 5 years after she disappeared in 1985, he committed suicide.
And that suicide, 5 years later, just leaves this huge cloud of ambiguity for investigators. Was it out of guilt for failing to protect her? Or guilt for something else entirely? His death just eliminates any chance of getting more answers about those voices he heard.
So if you look at the inner circle, you see the potential motive for the familiarity, for knowing the nicknames. If you look at Rasmussen, you see the capability for the blackout.
I think the unscrewed light bulbs suggest the person who took her was determined to conceal their actions from the entire building, from neighbors, from her mother. That points toward a professional, calculated threat like Rasmussen. But the use of Dr. Zeb, that suggests a killer, or at least a tormentor, who was much, much closer to home.
So the key takeaway here for you is that the person who made those tormenting phone calls might not be the same person who did the initial abduction.
Exactly. Or Rasmussen was far more meticulous and locally embedded than we think. If you prioritize the physical evidence, the bulbs, it points to an external planned abduction. But if you prioritize the communication, the nicknames, it demands a suspect with familiarity. And the case has never solved that logical puzzle.
The Laureen Rahn case resonates so deeply because it's just defined by these incredible, intentional, chilling acts of psychological warfare. It starts with the calculated planning of the blackout, and it extends for years through the persistent, personalized torment of those phone calls.
The psychological warfare is truly what makes this case unforgettable. The methodical unscrewing of the bulbs on all 3 floors, that demonstrates intense forethought. And then you layer on the fact that the caller is proving they have deep access to the Rahn household, using a cat's nickname, and timing the calls to the exact moment of Judith's original panic. 3:45 a.m. It's a fusion of calculated environmental control and personalized torment.
And the central challenge for investigators, even after all this time, is resolving that initial ambiguity. The scene showed no struggle, the friend was incapacitated. So, did Laureen leave willingly to meet someone she knew, who then used the darkness to cover their exit? Or was she coerced out by a predator who created that darkness?
Given what she left behind, no bag, no money, the new sneakers, a voluntary departure seems really unlikely, unless she was just stepping out for a minute. The unscrewed bulbs, they just strongly support an intentional act of coercion or abduction under cover of darkness. The details of the crime scene are inherently contradictory when you place them against the later communications.
It's been decades since 1980, but modern forensic techniques could offer avenues that didn't exist back then. What stands out to you as the most promising path to revisit this file today?
The analysis of physical items from the scene, if they're archived properly, trace DNA has evolved so much. Unscrewing those light bulbs, that was a hands-on action. Contact with the metal threads, the glass base, the person would have almost certainly left behind touch DNA. Skin cell.
That application of new tools to old evidence is often the only way forward. If they could test the original bulbs or even the door hardware and find viable DNA, they could run it through modern databases, familial DNA searching. That could potentially link the scene not just to Rasmussen, but to anyone in the inner circle. It's the single greatest modern hope.
And the City of Manchester Cold Case Unit, they've continued to revisit the file. That's kept the pressure on. But you have to recognize that a breakthrough in a case this old often requires one of two things: a precise memory that was overlooked, or the courage for someone to finally contradict a false story they've held onto for years.
And this is where you, the listener, come in. We're talking about Merrimack Street in 1980. If you lived there, if you worked nearby, a cab driver, a nurse, someone closing up a shop, any small detail about who you saw lingering near that apartment building could be the key. The facts of Laureen Rahn's disappearance haven't aged. They're just waiting for the right perspective. So we've walked through this narrow window of time between midnight and dawn in 1980, where Laureen Rahn just vanished. Her case is this painful reminder of how one small, planned action tampering with the building's lights can facilitate a life-altering tragedy.
The identity of the caller who used her cat's nickname, the source of those California charges rooted in exploitation, the chilling links to Terry Rasmussen, they all continue to pull at this decades-old thread. The evidence tells us she was taken. But the question of who took her is still split between the calculating stranger and the knowledgeable tormentor.
We're left to consider whether the person Laureen met that night used familiarity to gain her trust, or used the orchestrated darkness to conceal her departure from a home where her mother was already asleep. That decision to kill the lights suggests that whoever it was, they were determined to prevent anyone from seeing their face as they guided her out into the silent, terrifying night.
And that anonymity afforded by the blackout is why, 44 years later, we are still seeking the unaged truth.
Next on Threads of Truth, we return to one of the most haunting cases in modern history, Asha Degree Revisited, where new theories, overlooked details, and lingering questions challenge everything we thought we knew about the 9-year-old who walked into the dark.